Hi, I'm Charles Evans, music director of the Long Bay Symphony, here with my friend and colleague Tim Koch, who's the music director of the Carolina Master Chorale. And we're here for our second session of Speaking of the Arts, holiday edition, I guess. You know, when you and I spoke about this, the idea was Christmas music, but really the whole season is much broader than that for good reasons. I think there are those who think that this is Christmas and you should be thinking the reason for the season and all that. But I think it's important. It's a larger season than that. The idea of the winter solstice moving into a new calendar year has created a lot of elements even before Christianity about observing a holiday. What was it, Saturnalia or something, some Roman festival, and of course a lot of documentation the statement has been made a lot about the fact that Christmas was put in there to sort of override pagan festivals.
Sure.
So, I think that the whole reason I say that is that there's a lot of holiday music that's not necessarily Christmas music.
Yeah, it seems like the majority, of course, is focused on Christmas, but there's a lot of it, wintertime has so much imagery, so much poetry and so forth. So there are a lot of great settings of all kinds of winter music that's not specifically Christmas. Celtic music, there's a lot of, and of course, Hanukkah is very close to Christmas. And so, Hanukkah has a lot of fantastic musical traditions. So there's a lot to offer there.
Well, I am at least pining away at because we can't perform, or we're getting tooled up. We'll be back in January and doing some performances throughout, probably one a month, and then some additional things. I need to talk to you about Queen. We're still planning to do Queen outdoors.
I saw your little post.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about that. Yeah, but up to this point, we've outside of the youth program, which was that we had a couple of very nice concerts that happened in December. But outside of that, we pretty much are dormant, have been, at least as far as large ensembles. And so I've spoken to people many times over the past couple of weeks that how much they miss Messiah, and the idea that here we are in this season and we can't do it. And it's unfortunate, but this too will pass. But it makes me think of all the great holiday pieces and kind of how they're positioned. I think Messiah is an interesting one in that it is probably people's ultimate go-to for feeling good for the holidays, and yet ironically I'm not sure how many people understand that it's not really a Christmas piece.
Right. It's just a tradition that people have grown up with, right down to standing for the Hallelujah chorus and so forth.
Yeah.
My parents were both involved in their local chapter, the American Guild of Organists, in my hometown, Springfield, Illinois, and they had a Messiah sing every year. All the church choirs came together. Probably 100 singers, and they'd rehearse on Sunday afternoons about 3 or 4 weeks in advance of the performance.
Yeah.
And so I think I sang in my first one when I was about 12. I probably heard my first one when I was 5 or 6.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
So, 50 plus years, it's just, it's like an old shoe,
Yeah. And something you never get tired of.
Right.
But I think, again, this is just a seasonal association, even though it's a sacred piece, but it was really written more about Easter.
Right.
And written for Lent when they couldn't do stage performances.
Yeah, once in a while you get to hear, full-length Messiah performance, during the Easter season. It's very moving.
Yeah, and I think a lot of folks out there know that the first portion of Messiah is, the Christmas portion. But the funny thing is you can never do any portion of Messiah without doing the Hallelujah chorus. Unless you do the Worthy is the Lamb and Amen at the very end.
Right.
You always have to finish with the Hallelujah chorus.
Which isn't really part of the
it has nothing to do with Christmas. But there's so many great works out there. And of course we've peppered in there with Messiah excerpts. We've done, some of the Advent Bach cantatas. There's Bacharach and others, and even the Saint-Saëns Christmas Oratorio, pieces like that. And then what are your favorite?
I like because I'm a choral person and I hear so much of the same thing. I like to look for things that you don't hear maybe quite so much. There's a beautiful piece by Finzi, in It's so beautiful. And then the Vaughan Williams Odier, has a sort of big cinematic quality to it that's very beautiful. Those are some things that I like. I like a piece, that the Carolina Master Chorale commissioned, and I think you've probably heard a performance or two of this because we've done it a few times. But our local composer Andy Fowler wrote one of my favorite things that he wrote was his Outbreak of Peace, and it's that story of the 1914, the First World War moment when the opposing sides came out of their trenches on Christmas Day and celebrated together and played soccer and all of that. Andy Fowler has a quite moving work on that. It's not well known, beyond our region, but it should be, and that's a piece that I like a lot of Christmas time. Audiences have loved.
Well, as I was musing over this and thinking about in dialogue with you on Christmas music and holiday music, you have it in the choral world well over us in the instrumental world, because there's nothing, there's one thing, and you can already see it on the counter. One thing that is a direct association with Christmas or holiday. Otherwise, the music itself can't indicate that it's holiday music. You've got to have the text, the sacred text, or some sort of reference. But here's all we have. And once you hear that, So sleigh bell, if it weren't for sleigh bells, I don't think we would have any claim to being, having Christmas music or holiday music. So it's interesting. But what I sort of lament is it come out of vogue, and I think it's because we tend to be a little less epic with holiday performances. Certainly around here, though, we have the pressure. You have theaters who are doing pops things all the time.
Right.
So I think the Long Bay Symphony sort of decided, well, that's already being covered, so we sort of stay in a more classical realm. But I miss those. I'm sure those Robert Shaw. And it was Alice Parker, Many Moods of Christmas.
Mood suites,
You don't hear those much anymore.
You don't hear them so much.
You don't hear the bigger orchestra, the more epic things.
Yeah, those Robert Russell Bennett orchestrations are so colorful.
Yeah, they're so much fun. But I think that's, we look at big pieces for Christmas and the holiday. And of course, you've got some unrelated things, like, of course, the Nutcracker. Is a holiday piece by virtue of the story.
Right.
And then you've got the opera Hansel and Gretel, which is associated simply because that's when it was premiered. I guess it was Humperdinck's sister who wrote some song texts that she wanted her brother to set into some sort of pastiche of an opera, and they premiered it right around Christmas that year, and then turned it into a full-length opera. So that's the tradition that makes that a holiday piece. That's it, pretty much. And of course, that is really, I just think that is one of the most engaging pieces.
Amal and the Night Visitors. And when I was a young boy, I wanted to play Amal. I was a boy soprano, and my parents are musicians, and my mother would sit me down in front of the stereo and put the record on just for something to do in the afternoon, and I'd listen to the whole opera, and I had it all memorized by the time I was about 8.
Wow.
And then they finally did it in my hometown when I was 12, and I was still a boy soprano, but they were worried that my voice would change, and so they gave them all to a girl.
Oh, the ultimate insult when you were waiting in the wings.
Yeah, but I have now been able to conduct the opera, and then of course the Shepherd's Chorus and so forth. Those are often featured on Christmas Pops concerts.
Right. Yeah, I've done excerpts of the whole opera, as well as the symphony's done it a couple of times.
Yeah, sure.
And actually, Trinity Church did it most recently. I believe 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, we did it at Coastal a year or two before that.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so and of course, that is definitely, a Christmas and a wonderful Christmas selection, and it's interesting. I'm sure many folks know that was actually written as the first TV opera.
Right.
And it was the inaugural, episode or installment in the Hallmark Hall of Fame series.
Right.
To do them all, and of course it lasts about an hour, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe back in those days they did fewer commercials.
It's 55 minutes. Something
like that. So they had just enough time to get a few words.
I was able to go to a workshop before Maddie passed. He did a workshop for the American Choral Directors Association, and he played. He'd had a video made of the movie. He said, so often people play it as though it's in the Middle East someplace, but Amal even though he has a voice that sounds Arabic or something, Amal's a little Italian boy. He's like, Amal was me, is what he says.
Oh, wow.
And so the kings happen to just make their way through Italy on the way to find them.
Interesting.
So very.
Yeah, but I was speaking about these big works that are independent works, independent of Christmas carols is what I'm trying to get at. That are the mainstays like Nutcracker and to some extent Hansel and Gretel, and of course Messiah has its own special place and so on. But so much of what we hear is based on workings of Christmas carols.
Absolutely.
Because that's the thread of all of it. But I think I had talked to you before about for us to talk about what your favorite pieces are. I mean, of course, you talked about the Fenzi, and it just one thing that really comes to mind. And I was mentioning that we don't get to do, shall we say, substantial holiday concerts like we used to. Right. And one of my favorite pieces, I don't know if you know it, a Samuel Barber piece, Die Natali.
I know of that piece. I've never had a performance of it.
It's beautiful, and here is Samuel Barber taking these tunes like O Come Emmanuel, Lo How a Rose, and weaving them, doing them in canon and augmentation on top of one. It's an incredible piece of music, and you don't get that chance so much to explore, some sort of refined interpretation of Christmas carols. Now there are other pieces that I think we've done together, I believe, over the years, English pieces. Of course, the whole Christmas Day,
of course,
is just wonderful, and there's just something so noble about the old English carols.
Right.
You're sort of staying away from that more commercial side of things. No Rudolph there.
Right, the Britain Ceremony.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Another work, of course, just accompanied by harp, but another work that features the old English carols. It's not nearly as commercial.
Yeah. And I can't remember if we had done the Fantasia on Christmas carols.
Yes, we have. Yeah, the Vaughan Williams Fantasia is beautiful.
Yeah, and it's just that, like, from the start, I'm so intrigued by that. It's The Truth from Above, that carol.
Oh, yeah.
In 5/4 times. That's so nice to get.
No one writes carols like the English.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I as you know, I'm in the Episcopal Church, and I would have to say I'm definitely musically a snob about that that hymnal, which Vaughan Williams was very instrumental in putting together. Yeah. And it's just the hymns are so classy. Yeah. They really are. I have to say.
I couldn't agree with you more of that. But, so many great Vaughan Williams hymns. One of my favorite hymns, is Sine Nomine, the great Vaughan Williams setting. So many great hymns that he wrote and arranged. Absolutely.
So but those Alice Parker and Robert Shaw, Many Moods are also really.
There's some other composers, recent composers that have come along. They haven't caught on like that, but suite that I don't know if you've had experience with Randall Allen Bass, a piece called Feast of Carols, which has a big, beautiful orchestration like that. Might be something I'd like to look at someday. Yeah. There's some great settings of, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So there's, you can do with narrator.
Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of those narration things. You ever heard of Gage? Was it Barab, I think, wrote that? Anyway, it's a cute little story with the, da, 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 da. Then the angel comes down and throws these 4 notes. And so you're trying to solve what does that actually mean? And it's sort of the meaning of Christmas as it gets blended into Silent Night.
I see.
And it's a very effective little story. But, I think as we were talking about, there's Christmas and, of course, Hanukkah. But there's just the holiday.
Right.
And I have sort of humorously lumped that together in the term that was used by Jerry Stiller on Seinfeld, Festivus for the rest of us. You remember that? But I think, there's so much holiday music. And that's why I think it's important to know that Christmas is central to many of us. And yet, this is not just Christmas. It's a holiday season.
Right.
And it's funny, it's talked about it, from time to time about all these Christmas songs that we know so well were written by a bunch of Jewish guys.
A lot of them, yeah, a lot of them.
And,
of course, a lot of them were Broadway composers,
right?
And there was
Right.
that huge culture of Jewish composers. Absolutely.
Yeah. But of course you've got Irving Berlin.
Oh yeah.
With White Christmas.
He knew where his bread was buttered. Absolutely.
And I'm not certain it's true, but apparently he was furious over Elvis's version of White Christmas. So I haven't been able to substantiate it, but apparently he really was trying to get radio stations not to play it at all. So
I wouldn't see it. They would be bosom buddies.
Yeah. But yet it makes me think of cover albums. And you think of our CDs, that you play during the holidays. Like, what's your go-to? Like, when you want to really get in the mood, you're decorating the tree. You want to hear some holiday music. You want to hear carols.
Yeah,
or standard.
So,
well,
I mean, I'm a little different than the average bird. But do you know Gordon Goodwin and the Big Fat Band? Have you ever heard? It's one of the greatest big bands out there, and they have a really fantastic Christmas album. There's an unbelievable setting of the Grinch Who Stole Christmas,
really?
or the You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Anyway, it's a really top notch big band, and I love to put that thing on, but I don't get much work done while it's playing.
Yeah, that's the trouble. Most people can just listen to music and do other stuff. You're probably in the same boat. I just want to sit there and because you want to hear interesting stuff.
Yeah, if it's good, I get pulled in immediately.
Yeah. There's a Chicago Christmas album, which is not bad. I like that.
No, I like that one too.
Yeah, and I've even got a Beach Boys.
Oh, you do?
If you're gonna go that realm, that's a pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna go
What about Mannheim Steamroller?
Yeah. It's all right. It's all right. It's just atmospheric.
They're still going to town. I just got the advertisement in Wilmington that they're going. They booked them for next December, and it's already been announced.
Well, after a whole year of not being able to really do much of anything, people are going to be very hungry for that kind of thing.
Yeah, they sure will. They'll sell it out.
But you think about, in addition to Irving Berlin, you've got was it Johnny? What was his name? Johnny Mark.
Oh yeah.
And all those. You remember those Rankin Bass things?
Yeah.
Those, I call it claymation. I guess it's stop motion, but it's basically clay figures.
Mm-hmm.
Rudolph and all these tunes that were made. I think they were in existence. I think the shows were
Silver and Gold.
Yeah, but Holly Jolly Christmas, all of that stuff was part of that whole tradition. And I mean, Silver Bells. I mean, these are all great holiday tunes written by Jewish guys.
Right.
So, I think it is important to separate things out like that. That there is a holiday season within which Christmas is observed.
I think I'm gonna write some Hanukkah music.
Yeah.
It probably won't catch on.
Yeah. But yeah, like I say, I mean, you have much more opportunity to explore these things with a chorus. I mean, most of the orchestral stuff is kind of epic.
Charles, we just, were able to pull off a concert this last weekend in a very different way than we've ever done it before.
And we're all going to have to be doing that, but it had to be exclusively live streamed.
It was live streamed, and folks would still like to see it. You can go to the First Presbyterian website, First Presbyterian Church in Myrtle Beach, and the concert's still up there. But it ended up being a very rewarding project because it was so difficult to imagine how it would happen. And we were normally 65 or 70 singers. We had 28 who were willing to sing. And then you have to figure out how those voices work and what pieces will fit them and all of that. And then I already had a theme. I tried to make it a pretty broad theme, but the concert was called The Colors of Christmas, because we've already mentioned some of them today, but there's so many pieces that refer to, of course, red and green, silver and gold, and there's much more than that. But I stumbled on an arrangement of O Little Town of Bethlehem that I thought was just extremely beautiful, written by a composer who's working now in Alaska, and had a big, beautiful cello solo. It was so nicely played by Chad Hammer from the symphony. He played so beautifully, and everyone said so, and you could see tears in people's eyes when he played. But you just never know. And again, because we're a choral group, we have these smaller things that we're familiar with the tune, and so that pieces come together a little more quickly in rehearsal and so forth. But that was it was a fun concert to program and to find a few things that we hadn't found before. I mentioned Celtic music. We found a piece by Maddie Pryor called Red and Green.
Yeah.
And
that's one of my go-to CDs too, is a Celtic Christmas.
Yeah, right. Yeah. There's a lot of very moving and visceral, music, very physical music that's different than your typical Christmas carol.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I talked to you before about sort of the activity of Christmas production and funny things that had happened, and we had traded a few stories, but I was asking you to think back on any kind of calamity or strange situation, and I would have to lead off, because this kind of we have shared experiences, I think, as kids, because my father was Episcopal church organist. So when I was a kid, he was at the cathedral in Dallas, the St. Matthew's Cathedral. And their Christmas Eve service was, even back then, it was broadcast. And so we're watching this service, and the priest is giving a sermon. And all of a sudden, there's this great noise. And what in the world happened? Well, it turned out that my father was trying ever so discreetly to crawl off of the organ bench to go to the bathroom.
You hadn't turned off the pedal board?
And fell on the pedals. Really embarrassing, but very funny.
Yeah.
So, but just, and performances themselves, this will be, both of these other stories that I have will be location and people unnamed. Uh-huh. But in one place I was, the first time I
was... You mean because we might know who you're talking about?
Yes, absolutely. I don't want to embarrass anyone. But we talked about the Fantasia on Christmas carols of Vaughan Williams. And so in this particular town, there was this guy that had a great baritone voice, and everybody said, "Oh, you got to use," and I'll Bob. Got to use Bob. Said, great. So I met with him to rehearse through that. Of course, we said it's in 5/4 time.
Yeah.
And there are other complexities as well. And he had a great voice, but he had no idea what he was doing musically. And it was one of those things that you think, okay, that's all fixed up. And then we get to the rehearsal, which was, as economics dictate, it was just the day of. So there was really no time for anyone to absorb what they already didn't know.
They needed to know it by then.
And we got to the performance, and it was the most excruciating 15 minutes of my life. There was never a time where you got it right. And you got the chorus trying to figure out how to fit into that.
I've got one just like that. I hadn't thought of this one earlier, Charles.
Oh, they come up,
do you know the beautiful Baroque piece, the Charpentier Midnight Mass for Christmas?
I just know of it.
Yeah, it is an exquisite piece. And so I was new to the Carolina Master Chorale, then called the Community Choral Society.
Right.
And very idealistic about programming and so forth. Today I'm much more practical. I temper my idealism with making sure it will work for the choir, for the audience. All those things are really important.
But we did some good stuff in the day.
We did, no doubt about it.
Carlisle Floyd piece.
That's exactly right. And I haven't given up on those things. But we just have to be careful about when and how we plan.
The wisdom of age.
But this piece was. It seemed to me, it was Baroque, and so it was going to be tuneful, and it had all these other. It's called the Midnight Mass of Noel'S, little French carols, and so it's very tuneful. But what I didn't plan on was that my baritone soloist would not show up for the concert.
And
he was nowhere to be found. And so a very fine musician from within the choir and a very enthusiastic young man said, "I think I can do it." And so I didn't know what else to do because the baritone had a large part in the, and people were there, and so you just you go with a decision. And as it turned out, my other friend was not quite, he needed about another week or two of rehearsal.
Yeah, I would say.
So yeah, and that was in my first year with the Community Choral Society, and I'm glad to say we've never quite gone there again.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's just inevitable.
Yeah.
But, and I already related this story, which I think is of course, throughout the year we get these kinds of stories, but as far as the Christmas season and Messiah, I think this is the one that really sticks out to me. But we were doing a Messiah production here in the area. I'll give it that much location. This is many years ago though. And the person who was playing harpsichord was right in front of a particular singer who was, this woman was not a very good singer, but she also was not very subtle. And so this harpsichord player was a very, nice, devout person. Nonetheless, sort of closed his eyes and said, "Oh God, please, can you make her stop?" And within 5 minutes, she fainted. And he was mortified. But I mean, it could be worse,
Yeah, she didn't die. She
yeah,
fainted.
yeah, and I've heard of that too,
Oh yeah, yeah.
But any let's say wish list pieces, like especially as we're coming out of this, and hopefully going back to normal by 1 year from now, that we can actually do performances.
Yeah, I mentioned that Odie. That's a piece that I have never prepared before. I've only listened to the Vaughan Williams Odie. It's such a beautiful work. We haven't done the Finzi here. It's got a big, beautiful baritone solo that you would love. The Ian Terapax and Unearthed piece. Those are a couple of things at Christmas. The Magnificat. We haven't done the
that's true.
Magnificat. And you can do that with chamber orchestra, and it's
that's true.
It's a very exciting work. It does require a number of soloists, but the solos are not. I mean, there are people in the area that could do them. I was fortunate to do that piece. When I was at the Eastman School in my last year, I served on the faculty, and they allowed me to bring in a guest, and I brought in the great Bach scholar and conductor, Helmut Rilling, and we did a whole week on the Bach Magnificat. He taught classes, he coached soloists, he rehearsed the orchestra. We had student conductors, and he never looked at a score.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's a very exciting and beautiful work, the Magnificat D. Those are some pieces that are in my mind.
Yeah. Well, like I say, I would love to get back to more of an epic seasonal thing. I don't know if that's in the cards. Of course, I would love for us to do a Nutcracker as well. I think there's nothing like having an orchestral presentation of Nutcracker,
right. Yeah.
And that's been sort of a back burner goal for me all along.
I substituted on a Nutcracker in my hometown, Springfield, Illinois, with a touring dance company from London, and in the Illinois Symphony, and first and only time I've ever done it. But we did 3 performances, and when it was over, I felt changed by how extraordinary the music is. I mean, it's such beautiful music.
Yeah, I directed Nutcrackers in Memphis for a few years, and also played 1,000 Nutcrackers.
Yeah,
like year after year with the Dallas Ballet, we would do it, and it never got old.
Yeah,
it's just such great. In fact, it's
music.
Almost it's like the essential Tchaikovsky is ballet.
Right.
The symphonies, all that other stuff is great.
Yeah.
But he's a ballet composer first and foremost.
Nutcracker, Swan Lake.
And so, Well, just to close it up, let's say, what is your favorite Christmas or holiday pop song, and what's your least favorite?
Oh, my favorite. Well, I mean, my least favorite I mean, if I don't ever hear Grandma got run over by a reindeer another time,
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I'm not a big Santa baby person either.
Yeah, yeah. My
maybe an Eartha Kitt if I'll hear the original.
Yeah, maybe that's good. Yeah, Marilyn Monroe. She could
Yeah.
get something out of it in the day, but. And favorite holiday pop song. Why don't you go first on that one?
I think it's a Christmas song. I just think that is the classic
Mel
song.
Torme, yeah. The words are so great.
Yeah,
the tune
it's
is
just
so great.
well written. And it's just,
yeah,
it's smooth. It's not, I don't know, Rudolph and stuff like that. It's just
it's
a little too,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And that one is just, I think that's it for me.
I love that too. Yeah.
So
I'm just going to go with you on that one.
Okay. There are lots of remakes of things, and I think it gets a little draining. I don't know about you, but just going out shopping, I shouldn't say this because I sound like such a Grinch. But even before Thanksgiving, you're in the stores and they're playing Christmas music.
Right.
And I have such compassion for and pity for the people who work there.
Yeah, particularly,
they're going to have to listen to that same loop of songs for over a month.
Right.
And it's just Christmas. I really wish we could do Christmas during the 12 days of Christmas. That would be nice.
That would be nice, yeah.
I think it's interesting historically that, I was just reading recently that Christmas wasn't even a federal holiday until 1870. That the idea of Christmas being some special set-aside time was much overridden by Epiphany and certainly Easter.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of makes you think, it does have a real commercial bent to it.
Right.
For my money, I wish Christmas weren't that commercial, but for my money, that's why I prefer Thanksgiving. It's just, you can't overly commercialize that.
Right.
So, but we can make of it what we want. That's the thing. And especially now when we can't do a lot, being at home, having the tree, which we've already got back here, stockings and so on. We can enjoy being at home and doing our Christmas things on our own. And I guess we'll learn a great lesson from this in the end.
I'm sure we will.
Things will never be the same.
Will never be the same.
They will get better.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be back to some kind of normal, but things are forever changed at this point, and that's probably for the good, like anything else. But at any rate, it's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure,
and
Charles.
To all of you out there, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we all look forward to getting back out there. Like I say, the symphony will be doing performances. We'll have a series starting at the end of January. At the First Presbyterian Church, whether they have to just be live streamed like the Master Chorale, or we will be able once again to get a live audience in there. So we'll have performances once a month, and hopefully by the spring, we'll have our Queen production and be back to somewhat normal activity. So all the best to all of you out there. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you with another presentation after the new year.
Merry Christmas. Be safe.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.